in the long column of soldiers of all arms, of all corps, of all regiments who were retreating, each one going his own way, the very small group of which the emperor was the center, marched with all the rest going to Philippeville. It was a summer night without a moon. One could see, but not distinguish clearly, bivouac fires were here and there on the road, and around them men were resting, who were worn out and dying with hunger. We went on calmly and quietly, the horses at a walk. During the 19th, in the middle of the day, we arrived at Philippeville. The emperor, extremely fatigued, not only by the long journey, but by the day of the 18th. And the small quantity of sleep on the night before, went to a shabby inn and got a room. I half undressed him, and he went to bed to try to get some rest. He was very sad, and above all, very much absorbed in thought. It was in this town of Philippeville that the Duke of Bassano joined him again. The emperor took a little food. Toward evening, they brought before the door of the inn 2 traveling carriages of a sort. I put in the box of that which was meant for the emperor 15 or 20 packages of gold, each containing 10 rolls of 1,000 francs, which the Duke of Bassano had sent me. A moment before, the 2 field glasses belonging to the emperor were put in the carriage which was to follow, which was to be accompanied by the courier de Saint. When the hour for departure arrived, the post horses were hitched to the carriage, which could not hold more than 2 people, and which had no box seat. As I was determined to accompany the emperor at any cost, I was very much embarrassed. How was I to go? As there were iron points on the shelf behind the carriage, I could not sit down. I saw no other way but to perch behind, after the manner of footmen, holding myself up by the aid of 2 straps which were on the top, and there was only just room for my 2 feet on the shelf. As the days grew long, I hoped, as soon as daylight came, to find some other more agreeable way of traveling. The emperor and the Grand Marshal got into the carriage. I said to myself as well as I could, and we started. The other carriages remained a good way behind, so that we should appear to be traveling separately and not attract the eyes of curious people whom we might meet. I suffered a great deal during the whole journey. I feared perpetually that the straps might break or come loose, and I should fall over backwards, with my feet caught on the iron points. The road was very rough and tired me terribly. It was a long time to spend in a most trying position. I kept up my courage, always hoping to relieve my pain at the first opportunity. Finally, the emperor stopped at Leon, where he arrived on the 20th between 3 and 4 o'clock. I was worn out, as can well be imagined. It had not been possible for me to close my eyes in the position in which I had been obliged to remain so long. I do not recollect where the emperor got out of his carriage, but I know that we found ourselves in the courtyard of an inn, a good size, where the emperor remained for some hours, walking about and talking with the principal people of the town, such as the prefect, the mayor, officers of the National Guard, and some other people, sometimes with one, sometimes with the other. I remember that the officers of the National Guard showed great devotion, both by the warmth which they showed in their conversation, by the expressions which they used. There were a goodly number of townspeople and peasants in the courtyard who uttered cries of "Vive l'Empereur!" from time to time. Everybody was conscious of the great misfortune of him who had been at the head of a fine army, full of enthusiasm a few days before, and who today had lost everything but honor. These cries of "Vive l'Empereur" had something in them which saddened the soul. It had at first been the emperor's intention to stop at Lyon, to await the remains of his army, to organize them, and to unite with the corps of Marshal Grouchy, but feeling that his presence might perhaps be useful in Paris, he decided to go to the capital. The prefect, who had seen our pitiful equipage, offered the carriage to the emperor, who accepted it, and they went to fetch it. It was cleaner, more comfortable than that which brought me to Lyon. The horses were hitched to it, and the emperor got into it with the Grand Marshal, and I was on the box. As we started, repeated cries of "Vive l'Empereur" came to ring in our ears, but those who uttered them had sadness in their hearts and tears in their eyes. Early on the 21st, we arrived at the entrance to Paris, where the road ends, which we had just come over, but the emperor, not wishing to go in by that entrance, made the carriage turn to the right to follow the outer wall of the entrance of the Barrière du Roule. We entered Paris through that. We went down to the Rue de Faubourg. As the shops were closed for the most part, we were able to reach the Elysee without anyone's knowing outside that the emperor had returned. A single person was in the courtyard where he was walking. It was the Duke of Vicenza. He ran to the steps to receive the emperor, and they both, followed by the Grand Marshal, entered the apartments. The signs of the place at the arrival of its master wrung my heart. As soon as the emperor and the Grand Marshal had got out, I had the carriage driven into the small courtyard to the left, and I took out of it the packages of gold, which I carried into the little bedroom and put into the bottom of a wardrobe which was opposite the fireplace. When the other carriage arrived, Toussaint gave me some of the things which I had given him to take care of, but he gave me only one of the two telescopes. The one which was missing had probably tempted someone who wanted to have a souvenir. It was silver-mounted. After talking for some time to the Grand Equerry, the emperor came to his room, had himself undressed, and got into his bath. One would rather have seen him go to the chamber of deputies, covered with the mud of the battlefield and the dust of his journey. As soon as the emperor's arrival in Paris was known, a few people, some great, some small, came to resume their services, but there was no more that multitude of people coming and going as before. The emperor, for most people, was now only a ruined man, who consequently ought to be abandoned. On the 22nd, the emperor abdicated. I do not recollect very clearly what I did after the emperor returned to the Elysee. Events succeeded one another so rapidly that of all that happened, I remember only what I am going to tell. I recollected the Elysee. There were groups there standing before the palace every day, as well as in the Avenue of Marigny, and that from time to time cries of Vive l'Empereur were heard, and especially on the side of the terrace where the emperor occasionally walked. I also recollect that several bodies of troops shouted the same thing. I do not know now what prevented my going to Malmaison with the emperor. Perhaps I was not on outside duty that day. Perhaps I had been obliged to remain in Paris to get some clothes and replace the portmanteau and its contents, which had remained at Waterloo in the emperor's carriage. It was only the following day that I went to Malmaison. A few minutes after I arrived at the chateau, I was in the room next to the bedroom. When a door opened, I saw the emperor appear. "Where's Madame Valeska?" he asked. "Sire, I know. I've just arrived from Paris." He closed the door as soon as my reply was finished. Marchand, who was better informed than I, had just gone out. I recollected when the emperor wanted some sporting guns. I was ordered to go to Versailles to ask for some at the kennels. I made the trip with the greatest speed. One of the headmen gave me 3 single silver-mounted, and one with a revolving breech, double-barreled. During my absence, many carriages had been brought to Malmaison, and a considerable number of saddle and carriage horses. All the preparations to the emperor's departure had been made. A little traveling carriage of the most ordinary, most modest sort had been prepared for him, and carriages with coats of arms, and other carriages were to receive the persons who composed the suite and carry the baggage of each of the travelers. Among the different articles which the emperor took away, there was silver service, one of porcelain, the beautiful Paris one of the Sèvres factory, toilet articles, a lavabo with pitcher, and a bowl of silver from the Elysee, 2 field beds with all the accessories, cards, books. The calèche was furnished with a little canteen with some toilet articles, with a sum of money consisting of a good number of little rolls of gold and several pairs of pistols. There were also arms in most of the other carriages. The chef d'escadron, Bellini, who had been equerry to Madame Mère at Elba, and his wife, who was a Spaniard, had come to Malmaison, hoping to be included among the people who were to accompany the emperor, but as the number of those who had been accepted was already too considerable, His Majesty caused them to be thanked by the Grand Marshal, who expressed to them the emperor's regrets at not being able to take them with him.